Welcome to the GMJ podcast, the official podcast of the Georgian Medical Journal. In this series, we present structured discussions of peer-reviewed contributions published in GMJ, examining their implications for clinical practice, medical education, and health policy. This episode reviews the article titled, Launching the Georgian Medical Journal: Transparency, Editorial Standards, and the Foundations of a New Open Access Platform.
Thank you. It's great to be here to unpack this.
So I wanted to jump right in because, usually when we think about scientific truth, there's this expectation of absolute certainty.
Right.
You look at a medical journal, you see the dense text, all those charts, that authoritative peer review stamp, and you just assume you were looking at the objective reality of human health.
It's a very comforting thought, honestly. I mean, we all want to believe that when a medical paper is published, the raw data has been handed down from the mountain on stone tablets, completely free of human error or bias.
Right. But then you step into the actual mechanics of modern medical publishing, and suddenly you realize that truth isn't just found in a lab. It is meticulously engineered.
It's a process.
And sometimes the machinery building that truth is surprisingly fragile. So for today's deep dive, we are jumping right into the gears of that machinery. We're using a single, incredibly revealing text as our blueprint, the editorial by Professor Georgi.
And while an editorial about launching a regional medical journal, specifically the Georgian Medical Journal, or GMJ, which began publishing its first volumes in 2025 and 2026, might sound like, I don't know, administrative inside baseball. It is actually a masterclass in how we establish trust in a world that is just overflowing with information.
It really is. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
If we look at medical publishing not as a magical oracle, but as a manufacturing plant, you realize that raw data doesn't just magically become a verified medical fact.
Right. It has to pass through quality control.
Exactly. It's like building a skyscraper. You can't just pour concrete and hope for the best.
Yeah.
You need rigorous international building codes so people trust the structure won't collapse.
Absolutely.
And GMJ is launching with an absolute alphabet soup of these codes, right? Like CONSORT, STROBE, PRISMA, CARE, SQUIRE.
It is quite the list of acronyms. But to understand why this matters, our conceptual framework for this deep dive, essentially we have to look at the exact mechanisms of these guidelines.
Okay.
Because they aren't just bureaucratic red tape. They are physical traps designed to catch bad science.
So take CONSORT, for example. I know it stands for Consolidated Standards of Reporting Trials, but what does that actually look like for a researcher just sitting at their laptop?
Well, let's imagine a researcher is testing a controversial new blood pressure medication.
Okay.
Without a strict framework, that researcher might test the drug on 100 patients, find out it lowers blood pressure in 50 of them, but conveniently leave out the fact that 20 patients dropped out of the study because of severe nausea.
Wait, really? They just wouldn't mention the dropouts in the final paper.
Historically, yes, that happened constantly. They just sweep the side effects under the rug to make the drug look better.
Wow.
But if a journal enforces CONSORT, the researcher is forced to fill out a highly specific, standardized flowchart. They have to publicly account for every single patient.
So there's no wiggle room.
None. How many were assessed, how many were excluded, how many dropped out, and exactly why. It completely removes the hiding places for biased data.
It forces a level of structural honesty that a simple written summary could easily bypass. And I imagine PRISMA does something similar for a different type of research.
Precisely. PRISMA governs systematic reviews.
Okay, and that's when a scientist looks at dozens of past studies to answer a big question, right? Like, does this surgical technique actually work?
Right, and the danger there is cherry picking. A biased researcher might only select past studies that support their personal theory and completely ignore the ones that contradict it.
So without PRISMA, a systematic review is basically just a really thoroughly footnoted opinion piece.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. PRISMA requires a strict, documented methodology for how those past studies were searched for and selected, ensuring the review is actually comprehensive.
Makes sense. And STROBE does the same for observational studies, CARE for case reports, and SQUIRE for quality improvement.
Exactly. And hovering above all of this are the ICMJE, the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, and COPE, the Committee on Publication Ethics.
And those govern the human element, right? Like how authorship is credited, and critically, how financial conflicts of interest are declared.
Yes. So if a pharmaceutical company funded the research, COPE guidelines ensure that fact is plastered right on the front page, not buried in fine print.
Which is huge.
What's fascinating here is how GMJ is utilizing these standards. Usually, a new journal starts small. They might be a bit loose with the rules just to get enough papers to fill their first few issues, with the goal of adopting these heavy international standards years down the line.
Right, like, we'll figure it out later.
Exactly. But GMJ is implementing them from day one. By enforcing this massive operational lift for Volume 1, Issue 1, they are essentially saying, our geography may be regional, but our methodology is universal.
Okay, so the manufacturing plant is built, the quality control is incredibly strict, and we know the science coming off the assembly line is structurally sound.
Yes.
But an airtight, verified medical paper is completely useless if nobody can actually read it.
The distribution problem.
Right. And in the academic world, distribution is usually blocked by a massive paywall. But Professor Kakadze's editorial lays out a remarkably strict open access policy for GMJ.
They do, yeah.
I noticed they use a specific licensing framework called the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License, which is usually just tagged as TCBY 4.0. How does that actually change the experience for a reader compared to a traditional journal?
It completely flips the traditional economics of medical knowledge.
Oh, so?
Well, historically, legacy journals operate on a model of artificial scarcity. They take research, which, let's remember, is often funded by public taxpayer money or university grants. They have it peer-reviewed for free by volunteer academics, and then they lock that final paper in a vault.
So they get the product for free, basically.
Pretty much. And then if a hospital or a university library wants access, they have to pay exorbitant, sometimes multi-million-dollar subscription fees.
So the public pays for the research?
Yeah.
And then has to pay again to read the results. That's wild.
It's a highly lucrative model for the publishers, but a disaster for global public health. Under CC BY 4.0, that vault is blown wide open.
Okay.
It legally guarantees that anyone, a doctor in a rural clinic in Eastern Europe, a medical student in Tokyo, or just you trying to understand a complex diagnosis, is free to read, download, share, adapt, and even use the journal's work commercially.
With no fees at all.
Absolutely no subscription fees. The only condition is that you must provide appropriate credit to the original authors and the Georgian Medical Journal, and indicate if you made any changes to the material.
It treats medical knowledge as a public utility rather than a private commodity. But I have to push back a little on the journal's stated mission here.
Okay, go for it.
I'm looking at the title, the Georgian Medical Journal. If this is a regional publication based in the Caucasus, why is equitable global scientific publishing explicitly stated as their goal?
Well,
I mean, don't the massive legacy medical journals based in London or New York already handle the global scientific narrative? Why do we need a regional player stepping into that arena?
actually, the dominance of those London and New York journals is exactly why regional platforms are desperately needed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the vast majority of high-impact medical knowledge is controlled by editorial boards in Western high-income countries. This creates a massive bottleneck.
Kind of like a Western filter on global health.
Precisely. Those editorial boards naturally prioritize research that is relevant to their primary subscriber base.
Right.
So a massive, brilliant study on a disease that heavily impacts the Caucasus region or Eastern Europe might be rejected by a top-tier Western journal, not because the science is bad, but simply because the editors don't think it will generate enough citations in their specific hemisphere.
Which means local researchers are essentially silenced on the global stage, unless they research what Western journals care about.
And that skews the entire global medical narrative. Georgia is in an incredibly unique geographic and cultural position bridging Eastern Europe and Western Asia. By establishing GMJ as a world-class platform right there, it empowers researchers in that region to publish vital, locally relevant data without having to filter it through a Western lens.
And according to the editorial, the proof of concept is already there in Volume 1, Issue 1. They report on their initial submission volume and, critically, their authorship diversity and transparent acceptance and rejection rates.
Right, which shows it's working.
They are proving that you can complement existing Georgian medical publications while actively feeding high-quality, regionally sourced data into the global knowledge exchange.
They are breaking the monopoly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Open access, CC BY 4.0, it removes the financial barrier. The PDF is free. But let's be honest, there is another barrier that is just as formidable, if not more so, for a medical professional.
The time barrier.
Exactly, the time barrier. An accessible PDF still takes 2 hours to properly read and digest.
Yeah, open access doesn't magically give a doctor more hours in the day.
Exactly. Which brings us to a part of the editorial that genuinely blew my mind. Their institutional and policy implications. GMJ isn't just publishing text.
No, they aren't.
They have an integrated knowledge translation strategy that mandates 100% podcast coverage of all published articles across 7 global platforms. Every single peer-reviewed paper gets turned into an audio discussion.
It's incredible.
It's like taking a dense 50-page legal contract and having a bilingual friend translate the core obligations into a conversational summary over coffee.
And, we should probably acknowledge the meta-irony here that we are currently doing an audio deep dive about a medical journal whose core mandate is to create audio deep dives.
We are definitely proving their point for them. But from a practical standpoint, how does audio actually change medical outcomes?
Well, we have to look at the psychological and operational reality of a modern clinician.
Okay.
Imagine a cardiologist working at a regional hospital. They just finished a grueling, high-stakes 12-hour shift. They are exhausted.
Oh, absolutely.
When they get home, they do not have the cognitive bandwidth to sit at a desk and parse through a highly technical 20-page PDF about the latest observational study on cardiovascular outcomes.
Right. They barely have time to sleep, let alone navigate complex statistical methodologies at midnight.
Exactly. But they do have a 30-minute commute. They do walk their dog.
I see.
By converting peer-reviewed papers into structured analytical audio episodes, GMJ is effectively hacking the clinician's dead time. They are taking the science out of the desktop computer and putting it directly into the ears of the people who actually need to apply it.
So that cardiologist can listen to the breakdown of a new protocol on their drive home on Tuesday and apply that exact protocol during their morning rounds on Wednesday.
It fundamentally changes the definition of publishing. It treats dissemination and comprehension as part of the scientific process rather than just throwing a PDF onto the internet and hoping someone finds it.
It bridges the historical gap between academic theory and real-world health system improvements.
Exactly.
So, to review, they have rigorous international quality control, they have a completely free open access model, and they have this radical audio strategy to bypass the time barrier.
It's a very strong foundation.
It sounds like a flawless launch, but launching a new journal is chaotic.
And that brings us to the section of Professor Picazzi's editorial that I found the most surprising for our system-level reflection. You're referring to the explicit acknowledgement of their own administrative flaws.
Yes. Usually, a launch editorial is essentially a marketing brochure. But this editorial explicitly outlines the journal's current limitations.
Right.
Specifically, it notes the absence of indexing in major scientific databases and the use of interim DOI assignments via a platform called Zenodo. Now, I know a DOI is digital object identifier, basically a permanent web link so a paper never gets lost.
Yeah.
But major journals usually get those from dedicated registries.
Like Crossref.
Right. So what does this all mean? I have to ask, isn't admitting you aren't fully indexed in these major databases kind of dangerous for a new brand?
Well,
To me, it feels like opening a new high-end restaurant and hanging a giant sign on the front door that says, Michelin stars pending, and we currently have no official city health rating.
in a normal business environment, maybe. But in the ecosystem of modern science, it is a brilliant strategic move. This raises an important question about how trust is actually built in academia today. To understand why they're doing this, you have to understand the crisis of predatory journals.
Oh, the scam artists of the academic world.
Exactly. Predatory journals are essentially fake scientific platforms. They exist solely to exploit the publish or perish pressure on young academics.
Right.
They will publish absolutely anything, regardless of scientific merit, as long as the author pays a hefty processing fee. And the way these scammers trick desperate researchers is by faking their credentials.
How do they fake it?
They will put fabricated impact factors on their homepages. They will lie and claim they are fully indexed in the Ivy League registries of medical science databases like Scopus or the Directory of Open Access Journals, the DOAJ.
So the landscape is heavily polluted by liars pretending to be perfect.
Yes. The scientific community has developed a deep, cynical skepticism toward any new journal that claims to be world-class overnight.
That makes sense.
So, in an environment where the scammers are faking perfection, radical transparency becomes your most powerful weapon.
Ah, I see.
By publicly stating in their very first editorial, here's what we lack right now. We are using Zenodo as a temporary bridge for DOIs. We are not yet in DOAJ or Scopus, but here is our exact, defined, step-by-step roadmap for achieving that indexing. GMJ signals immense editorial integrity.
They are showing their math.
Yeah.
They aren't saying fake it until you make it. They are saying we are building this in broad daylight and you can watch.
And that builds deep structural trust. It proves to the global scientific community that the GMJ editorial board values honesty over optics.
Right.
They are willing to look like a work in progress because that is the reality of rigorous, ground-up journal development.
It is a fascinating strategy of honesty.
Yeah.
So to bring all these pieces together and concisely recap the journey we've just been on in this deep dive, the launch of the Georgian Medical Journal in 2025 and 2026 is far more than just a new regional repository for PDFs.
Much more.
It is a meticulously engineered machine. They are utilizing the strictest international frameworks, from CONSORT to COPE, to ensure every piece of data is structurally verified. They are leveraging the CC BY 4.0 open access license to dismantle the financial barriers that hoard knowledge. They are implementing a 100% audio translation strategy to hack the time barrier for exhausted clinicians.
Yeah.
And they're wrapping all of this in radical transparency about their own operational growing pains to push for equitable, global scientific publishing.
And, you know, for anyone listening who might still be wondering why the inner workings of a medical journal half a world away matter to you, the reality is this. The quality of the medical care you receive at your local clinic is directly downstream from the transparency, the accessibility, and the integrity of the journals publishing the research.
Exactly.
If your doctor doesn't have access to the absolute best data, either because it's locked behind a multi-million-dollar paywall, buried in a dense format they don't have time to read, or filtered out by Western-centric editorial boards who didn't think the region mattered, your health outcomes are compromised.
Right.
Platforms like GMJ are actively trying to fix the plumbing of the global health system.
It's about making sure the best possible truth makes it from the laboratory all the way to your doctor's office without getting distorted or paywalled along the way.
Precisely.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder today. If a brand new, regionally anchored journal in the Caucasus can implement 100% audio translation for every single paper they publish and practice absolute, radical transparency about its own administrative flaws, what exactly is stopping the world's oldest, most prestigious, and incredibly well-funded legacy journals from doing the exact same thing?
It's a great point.
How much faster would global public health improve if all science was instantly accessible, not just financially, but intellectually and audibly?
It is a question the legacy institutions will increasingly have to answer as platforms like GMJ set a new standard.
It certainly is. Thank you for listening to the GMJ podcast. For a full and detailed discussion of the topic presented in this episode, we invite you to consult the original article published in the Georgian Medical Journal. A direct link is provided in the episode description. We look forward to continuing these scholarly discussions in future episodes.